Okay. You'll be glad to know that the technical stuff is over, the real IT-related things. I've been asked to make an announcement on the 26th of April. There's a DIA ICSR Info Day, and I assure you it's not as technical as this. It's more business level orientated information day. They will be covering similar themes and topics, but not to the level of technical detail that we do cover here. So your business colleagues, in terms of change management and what's coming their way in terms of the new standard, it's very useful for the business colleagues to attend for that kind of level of information. There will be other info days which again look at more business change later in the year as well. So look out through the DIA website for announcements of other training information days where things such as the signal processes, signal detection, signal evaluation processes are likely to be described, because that will be following the GBP Module 9 updates that hopefully will finish going to public consultation. So there's that area of the business side. They need to be informed of these events and to participate if they can. So after that announcement, I shall hand over to Tom, because you asked several times what's the new testing process with EMA, can I get involved, etc. So Tom should cover those topics for you, and questions. I've said throughout the session that I can interrupt you at any point. So, yeah. Okay.
Yes, indeed. Please do interrupt me at any stage where there's something unclear or if I'm just talking too fast. I'll take through briefly, recap the current process, describe the new process, and then an alternate process for those using pre-approved databases, and then discuss steps that you can take right now to prepare for the new testing. So the current process has 6 steps to reporting to UDA Vigilance. Firstly, you register through our registration team, obtain EV gateway certification, and perform a communication test, both that's with our gateway team. Do development and validation testing if you wish, so you can play around in our test environment. It's a sandboxed area for you to do as you wish at that stage. Then there's the XML test phase with submission of 10 sample cases. That's through the EV QA testing team. And then last of all, production. Presently, registration, as many people here will be aware, only for both test and production. It's only open for those with an obligation to transmit ICSRs and SUSARs. So that's competent authorities, marketing authorization holders, marketing authorization applicants, and sponsors. Specifically, CROs, database developers, software suppliers are not allowed their own registrations at present. The XML testing at present, it's done on an ad hoc, first come, first served basis, can lead to a delay if there's a glut of testing. There's no guaranteed response time. We do multiple testing of the same database for different organizations. The senders often provide the cases as well, which gives us an incomplete control of the testing of all data fields. It's highly manual, it's slow, and as everyone knows, if it's manual, there's room for inconsistency. Importantly, current testing, and indeed any testing, can't be performed between the 16th of May and the 31st of August. We're closing the test environment to reconfigure everything for the new system. So if you have any testing to be performed, then make sure you've got it sent in as soon as possible, and we'll clear it before the 16th of May. Yes?
Does this downtime also apply to the XCVPM XComp environment, or only for the pharmacovigilance environment?
So when XComp is offline, so will XCVMPD be offline. There's a communication explaining the time periods of when XCVMPD will be offline. So we have the dates in there, but between the periods of downtime, it will be available. So when it's offline for updating, we'll bring it back online, and you'll be able to use XComp for XCVMPD data submissions. However, during the period of downtime and audit, those systems will likely be off as well as for ICSR. But there should be a communication either today or tomorrow if it's been approved.
It's been.
Well done.
Just to have it clear, so the whole gateway is down. If we would want to test with one of our partners, for which we're using the EMA infrastructure, this would also not work. So rerouting that you do?
So yeah, the whole system has to be taken offline and then brought back up because there's a lot of. I mean, the gateway software doesn't change itself, but all the systems that support it have to be replaced. So yes, there will be no communication with partners.
Okay, new process. New process is a lot less complex. Instead of 6 steps, there'll be 7. Number 1, as before, register. Number 2, book a test slot. That's the only new thing, so you can prepare in advance and plan and know when you'll be doing your testing. Number 3, obtain your gateway certification. Number 4, communication test. 5, development and validation testing. 6, the test phase. That changes significantly as well with the downloading, importing and resubmission of 8 cases. Now we're already piloting this form of doing the test phase anyway.
That can come later.
Yes. And 7 production events on the next slide.
Okay.
So registration, the big change, that's opened up to all relevant parties. NCA's, MAH's sponsors, still all able to register individually for test and production. And if you are one of these organisations, I'd advise registering for both at the same time, but the production environment won't be made active until your test profile is, your testing is complete. If you're already in production with EV or already have a test profile, you don't need to register again. You've already got the profile, it's already there. You would need to, if you're changing your gateway, redo the gateway communication, but if you already have a test profile and an active gateway, which is the same one you'll be using, you don't need to do those steps. But for PV database developers, PV service providers, and pretty much all other interested parties, if you want to perform testing directly with us, first of all, email us qattesting@ema.europa.eu with the subject line service provider testing request. So that way we'll make sure our registration colleagues know that you'll be provided with one of our vendor profiles so that it'll be available to you rather quickly and there won't be any questions about whether or not you can do it. Booking a test slot. This will start from July 2016. Once you're registered, I'd advise you to book your test slot because the number will be limited per month, and for any given month, it'll be allocated on a first-come, first-served basis, and all testing will be performed in your allocated window. We'll be describing the process for booking a slot. We'll be publishing it on our EV and EMA websites before July, and if you subscribe to our RSS or Twitter feeds, then you'll be alerted the moment it's published that it's up, and you'll know what to do and how to do it. You can, of course, book a slot at any time before the XML testing starts, but as with anything that's first come, first served, if you delay, then your desired time slot may be gone, so I'd advise booking sooner rather than later. Gateway certification. If you want to use the gateway, you need to obtain the certification. We don't mandate any particular software for e-reporting of ICSRs or SUSARs, but it does need to adhere to the standards outlined in Chapter 4 of a note for guidance. By the way, these slides are going to be sent round afterwards.
Yeah.
Yes, so there's lots of hyperlinks in the slides where I reference a document, so you'll be able to find precisely what I reference. Communication test. Well, it's relatively simple. I'm probably teaching my
Just,
Oh,
sorry,
hello.
one quick question on gateway. If you already have a gateway and you're in production, do you have to do recertification for all 3?
No, you don't. If you're already registered in test and or production and you've got a gateway, you don't have to do these steps. It's only book a slot and plan the testing. But establish a connection, you need your document transport choice. exchange of profile information, public keys for encryption, and then tester connection. And you just send a single safety message to the EV gateway. It'll be unencrypted, checked for basic accuracy, re-encrypted, sent to EV. The development and validation testing. Once you're connected, you have full access to send data to EV Web in the test environment. Since it's a copy of production, including parser and the MLM environment for downloading, you can use this to validate that your cases meet the EV business rules. You can try to break the business rules, do what you like, send as much as you want or as little as you want, and send all kinds of scenarios to it to check everything that may or may not work, and send follow-ups, nullifications, everything you could possibly want to test, you can. We won't be assessing your cases until we've agreed which cases will be the ones assessed. Anything else you send, we don't care about. Send as much as you like and use it at will, which is what I've just said in the next slide. It's at your discretion if you wish to perform any such validation. Obviously, you don't have to, but we strongly recommend it to ensure the XML testing runs smoothly.
Again, just Tom, for these sample testing, you'll be applying your business rules for all XMLs? You say you only look at a few for proper look, but everything is going to go against the business rules you have?
Yeah, the business rules run on every single ICSR which is sent to us. So you're using our parser and our business rules to check things. Humans will only look at a tiny number later on, but the business rules run on everything. So, new process to start from September 2016. For database testing, vendors and CROs, you can perform testing for a specific version and build on your database, and will then confirm if that precise version of the database passes testing. And of course, any changes to the database will require retesting with us before rolling out to users. Depending on the meaning of changes, you can always check with us, drop us an email to ask, we're going to be changing something in the back end which won't have any effect on XML. Will it need retesting? And we can confirm. But in principle, certainly anything which would impact the outputs to us would definitely need retesting. But we'll confirm that a specific version from a point in time has passed the testing, and you can then inform your customers they can just purchase that, and they'll be good to go. During the testing, you have to inform us of the precise version and build of the database so we know what we're checking with, and it'll probably be best to do it at the end, so then we'll know what it is. And in terms of your customers, we'll be letting the PV inspectors know which versions they have, which versions have passed testing, and if your customers are getting an upgrade or a customization in between times and not telling us, then they'll be held responsible for not having shown that their database conforms to standards. So it'll be important for them to continue to do so.
So when you're talking about database here, is it a combination of the database, for instance, the Oracle database version plus the application version? Is that something that you both want to know?
If you like to call it a system version, I don't know if there's a term that you're using, because every organisation is different. What Tom's referring to here when he says database is the system. Yeah. So you could change the database and add some additional tables which don't affect the data you transmit to us. We don't care if you add tables and maybe some additional things in the back end. Likewise in the application, if the application you modify the screens so they appear in a different order, it doesn't affect the XML file. It just affects usability of the tool for the users. Those kind of changes have no impact on us. Where it does have an impact is if the XML file is being changed. So what we're receiving from you is being changed, because there's a potential for things to be different and therefore potentially not correct, or it it may cause issues with the business rules, and we may need to go through a phase of agreeing how to deal with a specific issue as it arises. So it's just important that you don't roll out the software to everyone, and then we have 100 companies or 50 companies suddenly getting lots and lots of rejections. We just want to be a bit more controlled to make sure that we're tested from both ends and we're both happy that there's nothing major happening. The idea is also to lessen the burden on organizations to do the testing. I would emphasize that if you do local customizations and you do versions of specific installs which are different from the vanilla off-the-shelf version, those would need to be looked on a case-by-case basis and if they affect the XML being generated. If the local customizations are purely just interface type design or don't affect the XML, then we can say that the base build and customizations are the same as the vanilla version. So we just need to be a bit more communicating with each other what exactly is going on with these specific instances, so that we can say whether a test is required or not. We want to reduce the burden as much as possible on both sides in terms of testing. Okay.
But do we have to make the decision? Can we make the decision by our own to decide? That requests a retest, or do we have to contact EMA every time we do a little adaptation to our system?
It'll depend. Sometimes it'll be really obvious. If you're changing the font color, or a color of a button, obviously we're not interested. But anything where you might be affecting the XMLs coming out, or the rules to whether or not they send the cases, drop us a line. Over time, with the MAHs, we've had lots of communications with larger MAHs and come to understanding, so that people get a better understanding. So very quickly, the grey areas get narrowed down so that people really do understand. So you won't have to email us every week to ask, can we make this change?
So very specific example, I'm not changing my database version, my system version, but I'm updating a code list, which then impacts the XML, because it's a code list that goes into an XML.
You don't have to test with this every time Medra changes.
Yeah. So not Medra, right?
But the other code lists follow the same principle.
Right.
They're unlikely. Most of the code lists haven't changed in 10 years, so I don't see them changing in the next 10 years. ISO IDMP will come back to testing and what we need to do there at a later date. Let's not stress ourselves just yet.
Vendor-specific application and database version has been tested by one organization. That information will be with the EMA. Now, if another organization buys same version, same application and version, will that organization needs to be retested?
We'll be testing with you as a vendor. We can test directly with you as a vendor, and then you can confirm, or you and your customers confirm, we are buying. We'll say this version has passed testing. You can then tell your customers or would-be customers, this version has passed testing. If you buy it and install it, you can go into production almost straight away.
Okay.
That will be the truth, and your partners, your customers will then tell us, we've got this precise version, do a communication test, and that's it. Okay. So any customers who buy exactly that version will be able to go in.
So vendor usually always, a new version will be released every year. That means this testing environment will be open for the vendors, so we can make that version tested and we can get that confirmation.
With that configuration setting,
yes,
if the customer starts messing around with configuration files, they have to retest, because any configuration changes that affects the XML, so they decide, we're not going to use null flavors, or we're not going to populate this field, we're going to switch it off.
Okay.
Anything like that, you have to retest, because we'll tell you, switch those fields back on. We've had it before. Someone said, we don't use the test section. We don't record medical history. What do you mean you don't? So don't want to hear any of that again. I don't want to have those arguments. If that happens, then we'll go back to full testing with everyone.
So Nick, is the onus on MAHs to inform you if the version changes, or is it the vendor who's actually upgrading the version?
Well, we'll have the ability to communicate with the vendor if they want. I'm sure they'll be testing before each release with sending stuff to our system, just to confirm that there's no obvious issues. And they may contact us to do, if they consider that they're affecting the XML submissions to us, they've made some changes somewhere, then they can communicate with us to do a retesting to confirm that we're happy with the changes that they made and there's nothing. And then that can be rolled out to the customers, and the customers don't need to retest with us unless they then do some configuration changes and local updates and local installation changes.
And just to finish answering that question and then come to a gentleman over there. Yes, the onus will be, if you as an MAH switch your version to a new one, let us know we're going from version 4 to version 5, and we'll say, that's fine, we've passed that version, so it's all okay. Sir.
Do you have any information if the similar changes of the testing process will be made in the XCAV testing process?
We aren't covering the XCV-MPD testing today. I'm not sure
Yeah,
how we'll do
I
it.
know, but since the gateway will be closed, do you know if something will change in the XCV-MPD like that?
There should be there's no planned changes to the XCV-MPD apart from a technology refresh.
Okay.
So there's the parsers that process the messages are changing as part of that release, but the underlying business rules it should not be affected.
Okay.
Okay. So we provide... Oh, hang on. Sorry, another question.
Just a question, if I got it right, all of this testing is mandatory if I want to start sending EMA XML files. For the grabbing of XML files, the intake that will start mid of next year, there's no specific testing required, right?
Not from us.
So I can oblige you to test with me. Does this work?
If you want cases from us, we ain't testing with you. No, but actually, to be serious a second, if you want to, I think in order to get the cases, you would need to be registered. So you'll either need to have gone through the testing or have the old production registration, or have one person have the EV web training to be in production. But yes, you'll be able to grab the cases without full testing.
Hi, Tom. You mentioned if something changes in the XML file test, that's fine. You also said that if there's a change that decides whether a system creates an XML file or not, then test as well. So our submission rules are changed on a regular basis.
Well, you're either compliant with reporting requirements or not for that. That's
Say if regulations change, we change the submission rules, it means XML files are not created where they used to be?
No, because that's either the file is created or it's not created. You have to make sure you make the right choice. Yeah. Otherwise, the inspectors will find a non-compliance in submissions. So
it doesn't mean we retest the
no,
system version with you.
No, okay. We're interested in the content. So we want the data represented in the correct way so that we can interpret it correctly for the analysis. If we start putting things in the wrong place, we will start misinterpreting the data, and then the analysis doesn't work correctly. So that's why we do the testing, to make sure that everything is in the right place. And when you make changes and things start appearing in different places or coded differently, then we know there's an issue.
Okay, so we'll be providing... Oh, one more.
So going back to one of the previous questions, EMA gateway is also shared by other partners. So as part of this testing cycle, will there be a redirect testing as well to ensure the files which are sent to EMA gateway is also redirected to the recipients correctly?
I think I covered this in the morning, but there's no testing with NCAs from your point of view. Caveat, SUSARs that you have to report under the directive. So there may be some level of testing required for NCAs if you have to submit a SUSAR to the NCA. So beware, there may be some testing required with NCAs in the future for clinical trials, because we won't be doing the centralized reporting on behalf of you until the CT portal comes in and people start using the regulation to approve clinical trials.
I have one question regarding software testing, again vendor testing, regarding the minor versions of software or application. Suppose as a vendor, they have tested and got a certificate from you for a version 4, which is a major version, but due to bug fixes and defect fixing, they have released further minor versions.
4.1.
4.1, 1.1, whatever. And there are many different builds also. So is it required that every build they release, it has to be tested again?
Only if it's going to affect the XML file, the output that's sent to us. If it's a bug fix which is, I don't know, you've got internal commenting when you're passing through the workflow, we don't care. It's completely irrelevant to us. We would never see it. We don't have any interest in it. If it's a bug fix because you've been doing the autopsy, patient autopsy wrong, yes, of course we want to know. So it's on a... we need to know on a need-to-know basis, essentially. If it's going to affect what you send to us and how your clients will be able to be compliant with the legislation, then yes, you need to retest. If it's minor background, then no, you don't. And you can always just drop us an email to say, here's a change. Do we need to retest? And we're happy to, we're friendly, approachable chaps, aren't we, Nick?
Yeah, so the release notes that you would say, these are the changes that you're making, and then just a confirmation that for this release, nothing's affecting the XML that organizations would be sending to you. Then we'll keep a note of that, and then inform the customers saying that you can upgrade to version 4.1 build number XYZ, and then that's fine. But if you're doing a release that affects it, then yeah, we want to test with you to make sure that when that release goes out, we don't get any nasty surprises.
And I should imagine that you'll find many of your customers will be, would rather you had checked, so then you can officially say, EMA said it's okay. But, it'll be a 2-email process, one from you, one from us. Okay, moving on. So we'll be providing 8 cases. You'll be able to download the cases, and I describe the current process in a moment. May slightly change, but again, we'll publish that, and you'll hear about that. You make the appropriate changes and then transmit the cases to EV. So right now, you download the XMLs from the ICSR export manager. The intention is that will stay the same, but the URL, which is in this hyperlink, might change. You enter a particular start date, an end date. So this was the day which I sent these test cases to the export manager. So read to the export manager. So you'll only get the 8 cases you need. You just click request, refresh list, download, and then the cases are available. It's an XML message. It's a properly formatted message with a sender identifier as MLM service, and the receiver identifier will be whatever you're logged in as, vendor 1 or GSK test or whatever. And then you'll be able to just import the cases directly into your database. Change the receive and receipt date to the day you downloaded them. Change the safety report ID, as it currently is. And there is a drug. All of these cases have a drug called spare drug and a substance called spare substance, because we know that often you need your company's drug. So you can change that to one of your company drugs. Change any of the fields which are populated. We pre-populated most of the fields. You can change any of those, but don't add data on other fields, because otherwise it makes our testing a bit of a pain with the comparisons trickier. And then just retransmit them. And then there are 2 of the cases have, I think it's called SC-EMA test case-1-follow me up, and another one called nullify me. And obviously they should be followed up or nullified. And so you send one version, and then there's instructions in the sender comment. Just make 2 or 3 extra changes and send them again. I mean, really, it's probably about a 20-minute process if everything goes according to plan, which it never does. But in theory, it's about a 20-minute process, and you could get one of your lowest level people to do it dead easy. So, in theory. Once for production, once you've completed the testing, you'll receive confirmation from us that the again, a specific version and build of your PV database has completed testing on a particular date, and that can be used in production. And if you're an MAH, MAA sponsor or NCA, you'd include this when you contact registration. Or if you're already in production, then you can simply start using your new system in production. If you're a CRO or database provider, then you can provide a copy of this to your clients for their registration. So they can show, here's our database, it's the one that's been approved. There's a slightly even shorter process for those using an accepted database. So if you're purchasing and installing without customization something off the shelf, then it's 5 steps: register, gateway certification and communication test. Again, if you're already there, then you don't need to do those. Single case test and production. And as Nick has said many times and in great detail, if there's customization, then there'll need to be full retesting as on the previous slides. And the single case test, you send a case to EV, you receive an AC, you email us, and we just check, yep, you've done the right case numbers and you're able to populate your sender identifier correctly. It's a 30-second job for you and a 5-minute job tops for us if our database is running slowly, if EVWeb's running slowly, or a 2-minute job if it's running fast. And then, you know, it'll be 1 business day, we'll say, and that's it. So it's going to be very quick.
Sorry.
Oh, yep.
What's an accepted database? Is it a specific release of a software that EMA will certify saying?
Well, we won't certify, but we'll say, we'll test with a vendor. We'll say specifically, they'll tell us, you know, version 4.1.2 is the one we're testing with you. We'll say, yes, this has passed testing. You can sell this to customers, and then this passed testing on this date. And then they'll be able to send you a copy of that email to say you can install this. If you install it de novo, then you can go in production almost straight away.
Does this accepted database include your version of the gateway too? Meaning that we might need to implement workarounds against bugs in your gateway, including things like, for example, errors in your XML parsing, assuming that you have the same bugs as we do in software development?
So for the gateway is commercial software that we have.
Yeah.
And you have to do a communication test to say that the XML file can get through the gateway. Our gateway doesn't do anything with the file. It doesn't open it up, look inside it, or anything.
Not necessarily the gateway communication, which was most likely AS2 anyway. So we're talking. I'm talking about business rule checking, all the other stuff.
That's after the gateway. So.
Yeah. So we do not get a specific rule set of your validation set, which is validated against our software. So basically, not something like you validated our software against version 1st of May 2017.
Well, we'll be dating the email, which, you know, the confirmation which we send that it's passed testing will be dated. Our business rules are published, and whenever there's a revision, those are dated, and they haven't been revised since, I think, 7th of February 2011, was it?
October 2010.
Oh, yes, October 2010, and they came into effect on February 2011. So we don't change our business rules very often. If we make some horrendous mistake and our business rules are wrong, then A, we should be shot or sacked, and B, we would obviously need to change them. But we'll discover that, you know, it'll be discovered in testing if we've failed to do our job properly and have erred in our business rules. So, you know, we'll if we have to make a change, then we will, and hopefully we'll find out in the first test.
Yeah, it's not a trigger. If we make a change to our system, we're not saying you have to retest with us, your version. If that's the underlying concern, no. If we make a change, we're not asking you to retest. However, an implication of a missed business rule might mean that you might have to do an update to your pre-validation checks or your interface. But again, that might happen without touching the XML, so no retest.
So steps you can take right now. First of all, register for test. If you're not an MAH, you can email us to register your interest so that we can create the correct profile. So if you're a CRO, if you're a vendor, drop an email to this email address, and we'll then know how many profiles to create. So that'll be helpful for us as well, so that our colleagues can do that. If you're already registered in test, it's, as said before, it's not necessary to re-register. Configure the database to accept cases from MLM service. You'll need to do this. That's not exactly going to take too long. And you can obtain the gateway certification and perform a communication test if you're already in test, and you can sort out the gateway stuff first. Again, that generally tends not to take too long in my experience. And as I said, if you've got an active profile and won't be changing a gateway, this isn't necessary anyway. You can also, if you're in test, download Recurrent test cases and import them into your database. And if you're not an MAH, we can send you a copy of the R2 version of the cases and the R3 versions as well, so that you can see what the current test cases are. And of course, you can subscribe to our RSS or Twitter feeds so that when the method for booking a test slot is published, or indeed any changes we make to testing process, we'll be publishing this information in our news section, and you'll be immediately notified of that.
Are you going to, once you go live in 2017, July, are you going to keep the identifier as MLM service, or you're going to keep it as that, yeah? Okay.
That's just for downloading the cases. The test identifier that you would send it to is EV test. There's EV test and EV-CTM test, but that's all published in our business rules and everything.
Right. The only reason I ask is we use that identifier to work out whether you've sent us a case for the MLM service, and then we do the MLM processing. That may lead to us changing our process slightly. So.
Yeah, and as I mentioned this morning, when you do the export, you can set filters to say that this export from the system is for MLM cases only, or so you can exclude them, say I don't want the MLM cases, or I only want the MLM cases, or everything, including the MLM cases. So you have all the options for when you do the export. For the identifier, that we just need to check technically how they plan to implement that.
But it won't. This is just for test. For production, it will be MLM services only for the MLM cases, and you'll have all the other ones for the others. And that's the end of it.
So, Tom, a couple of points. If a vendor has got your confirmation that they've passed the test, me as an MH are we still? Is there an option available for us to retest using the same?
If you want to, I should. Yeah, I mean, if you want to be absolutely sure, if you know that certainly, if you've made any customizations or significant customizations, it's not an option to retest. You just must. If you really want to be belt and braces and spend extra time testing, then yeah, you can do that as well.
So the other question then related: if your confirmation will have a date on it, would we expect to store that in a master file?
Well, I would personally. Right. You know, it's the sort of information that an inspector would want to see. So if they'll you get a copy of a confirmation that we bought.
Therein lies the question, the first one, because there's an expectation that if a vendor's tested, we would expect the vendor to send us that for our master file. If not, we'd do the test ourselves to get a confirmation from you that we have certification for use, right, in production. So that's one thing.
But I mean, you'll be paying the vendors millions a year. To get them to send an email is pretty cheap for them. I should imagine that they'd want to. And if I was a vendor, I'd be waving it round in everyone's face. I'd be emailing out copies to everyone in the world. Our database has passed. You can install it and do it. I'd include it in my sales pitch if it was me.
Right.
So I'd be astonished if they didn't share with you the fact that they have the proof that we said it's okay.
Yeah, but MAHs would probably have other configurations added to that version release. That's one thing. Well, that's for us to work out. Okay. The other thing then is you mentioned MLM service, and yes, we already download MLM. So for testing, you'd want to differentiate that sender ID. I think you might want to consider that.
We'll look into that. So, as I say, that describes the present process. We might make a slight change if necessary, because we're not.
Right.
If we have to, then we will. But we're proposing the export manager now because everyone, or almost all MAHs, are affected by it anyway, and it's the useful way of having the cases permanently stored. People can go and get them. People who are registered can just go and get them anytime they need.
Right.
And valid.
So then for July 2017 for R3 imports, are we able to contact QA testing to get some R3 XMLs that we can use for checking the imports?
I already published them, but there's so if you go to the website I showed you, this one in the corporate one down there, I think it's number 6 is the QAT test files. We'll be updating them because someone eagle-eyed has spotted the reference to one of the classes is it's quoting the wrong it should say PORR 4613 and it says MCC11. Anyway, so I just need to reprocess once I fix the bug. I already fixed the bug in the XSLT, but I'll reprocess that file and recreate it. But the other intention is that I'm going to recreate by hand using EV-Web, not with XML Spy, the actual test files, so that it's completely in accordance with our implementation of R3. So we'll be updating those test files. At the moment, you can have a look at the converted ones, and but we'll be updating them later in the year. Okay, we've got scheduled 10 minutes to go through questions. Hopefully this will be quite fast. Tom kindly put all the questions received into a presentation, and we've got 13 of them. I think
there's 15 questions, 13 in the presentation, 2 in the Word doc.
Okay, so there's 2 left in a Word document that we couldn't display, but we'll quickly go through those. I think most of them have been answered, but let's see. Okay,
Nick, will you share them? Because we got all other 4 presentations we already got in our inbox except for the Q also. No,
you won't have received this one because I only made it about 10 minutes ago. Well, no, 10 minutes before I came down, I made it. So yeah, you definitely haven't got it yet.
I think we answered this one. Yes, is the answer. Yes, they can. AS1, AS2 will continue to be supported. In theory, AS3 can be supported, but we never really implemented it for E2B. They did implement AS2 and AS3 for ECTD, but I just have a point. If you have an option between AS1 and AS2, choose AS2. Okay, if you have a choice. At ICH level, M2 group are discussing the transport protocols approved, and I'm pushing to have AS1 deprecated as a supported version. I mean, we'll continue to support it, but encourage people to move over to AS2. ICH will also add AS4, hopefully, as a future possibility, which is web services. Receiver ID, sender ID for testing, what are they? They're in the implementation guide. As Tom said, EV test, EV CTM test, that's what we're going to use. So that's in the implementation guide. Validation tool, yes, I heard you. At the moment, the validation tool is submitting test cases to the test system, and you'll get back an ACK saying whether we accepted it or not. But if you want additional tools to check for things like things adhering to the logical model, then that will come later, hopefully, if I have time. I have to dust off my XSLT book to work it all out again. Okay, Medra version codes, as stated in the implementation guide, 1 version. Okay, so every time you have a code in a code system, you can quote a code system version, but the ICH implementation guide said, choose 1 version and stick to it. Don't do a hodgepodge of 13 different versions of Medra for 1 message. So we've been doing that basically for R2, so that doesn't change anything. We just choose 1 version, and that's it. So if you don't choose a single version, you'll get a rejection due to the business rules checking. Okay, just use one version, the latest or the one previous to it.
I guess we're asking why there's a version field for each tab, just because there is.
Why is there a version field? Oh, okay. Because every code system has to have a version. HL7 says so, so there you go. I mean, yeah, okay, the logical model says there's only one, or the ICH implementation guide says there's only one, but that's just to make sure that you choose just one and then apply it systematically throughout. Major codes. Yeah, I can fix that. I was doing it by hand. Give me a break. Or is it an EV web rug? Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I thought that's been addressed. But...
We addressed it in the export manager. but
Oh,
maybe
export
we're-
manager, yeah. I mean, if you treat it as a numeric value, who cares? But I know people like to treat numeric values as text, so yeah, okay, fine. 0, 0, leading zeros has always been a bane, but anyway. Numeric values, why don't you just choose a better unit? In UCOM, you can, why quote in grams when you can quote in kilograms or milligrams instead of micrograms? Think about the best unit to use rather than trying to express too many zeros for a value. UCOM allows you to express the unit better. So if you've got millions of units, why don't you just use the million units, 1 million units of biological substance X? So I would say you're probably choosing the wrong unit. TBD fields. So that's the ISO IDMP placeholders. So it's in the reference instance. It's there to say this is where it will go. Don't have to quote them yet. You don't need to include them yet. It will come later when ISO IDMP is there. Reaction reference ID. IDs repeating for the cases. Yes, I mentioned that because the XSLT, the backwards forwards conversion tool, doesn't create UUIDs. So, of course, different cases converted using the same tool will have ID1, ID2, ID3 for both the drug and the reaction section. I mean, the drug will have a D in front of it and the reaction will have an R in front of it. But yes, there's not much you can do with the backwards forwards conversion tool unless you implement some other software to generate UCOM code, UUIDs and insert those into the XML file. So, just have to live with that. But for the test files, I'll update them with proper UUIDs in the future. MPID, PHPID is not available. Is there any validation rule for the same? We'll have to wait. We'll update the implementation guide with whatever comes out from another group. So it's a bit too early to say what they will decide on all this. That's for the ISO IDMP task force to come up with some guidance on how to handle that in exchanging data. So I can't answer that one yet.
This is a 2-slide question.
Description of XPath of E2B. Wow. I think I might take this offline with the person that asked it.
This is actually the question. Clarification needed on first comp element and second comp element.
Yeah, because it's referring to expressions of time intervals and related to the ICSR technical information document related to XPaths. Not a good area for me. I don't like those XPaths in that tech doc because I know quite a lot of them wrong. So I'll probably have to take this one offline. Sorry. Test result UCOM code. Yeah, this is the toes, isn't it? Yes. So the issue here is in the original R2 file that was converted, Tom came up with a nice case, and I'll blame him for that. It was polydactyly was the reaction for a parent-child case, and in the test things there was an observation that the patient had 6 toes. And because the backwards forwards conversion rules looked for toes in the list of units, didn't find it, thought, okay, let's put some squiggly brackets around it and then send it on. That's one of the R2 to R3 wonderful things that you'll find happening. So these kind of rules can't account for everything. So yes, you won't find a UCOM unit of toes, but because it's got curly brackets around it, you're not going to get a rejection. Uh, 13 and 15, see Word document. Yeah, I think. It's here. It's one of these. Strange.
Plug my netbook in as well. Oh, questions.
There it is.
There you go. There's 13 up there.
Okay, let me just.
Okay, yeah, that's where it starts. Inconsistent.
So I think I need to take this home as homework. I'm not sure I understood what the issue is. So I might have to go back to the Inquirer just to say that, because they were referring to the technical document, but I need to is that the ICH one? I need to ask more questions about the question to understand which documents they're referring to. If it's, I imagine it's EU, because that doesn't look like the EU implementation instance. Okay, so another one for offline. And this is someone eagle-eyed spotted that the backwards forwards conversion rule was populating MCCI_IN instead of PORR underscore something. Isn't really used for anything, but a good spot. I never spotted that. But it shouldn't affect the files. No one uses this for any particular processing rules unless you're real HL7 geek, then not many people would be concerned with this. But it's a mistake. I'll fix it in the backwards forwards conversion style sheet. So the next release of it will have that address so it doesn't happen anymore. And then we'll update the reference example instances to match the reference instance. So there you go, 4 o'clock finished. Is there any more questions? Or you all want to run away?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Sorry, I have one. It's about the MLM service. The following situation occurs. Company downloads a file from the MLM service and realizes that they already have that case from their own literature search. And when they look at the duplicate, they realize that they have much more granularity and more information in there. Should they send it back to yes or no?
Yes, send us your case again, add in the MLM service number in the report duplicate section, send the case back to us, then we'll immediately spot, oh, there's a duplicate. Our algorithm will pick it up in an instant, and the following morning at about 4 a.m. UK time, 9 a.m. Indian Standard Time, it'll get dealt with. And so they'll be merged, and the MLM service case will be updated by lunchtime UK time. So we sort them out immediately. So yes, please do, and within a day it's sorted.
As per XSD, action drug is required for concomitant products. According to ICH, it's an optional.
Sorry?
Action drug.
Action taken with drug in...
For concomitant products is required for as per XSD.
I have to have a look at that because I can't quite understand if that's, I mean, a null flavour if it's, because if it's optional, but we'll have to have a look.
Okay. I have one more question. As per XSD, reporter always is an investigator. Is there any criteria we can differentiate a reporter, author, or investigator?
Investigator in HL7 is not the same as you would have in clinical trials. Investigator just means the person that's investigating the event. So you have someone who's playing the role of investigator. It could be a detective, or it could be a doctor, it could be a consumer. So this is just the person that's responsible for creating the report, rather than the concept that we used in clinical trials.
Okay. Thank you.
Going back to that action taken, I think what we've seen is for suspect and for drug not administered, there's guidance on what to do for the action taken. Concomitant drugs was where the question's coming from.
Well, there should be no action taken with concomitant drugs because otherwise it wouldn't be concomitant. If you're stopping the drug because of the reaction, isn't it suspected by the doctor?
Precisely. So I think what the question was, the XSD was mandating it for even concomitant products, and was throwing a parsing error there when there wasn't anything available.
I'd have to have a look at how that section is structured, because action taken is an observation against the drug, isn't it? But do you need to populate the observation if there is no observation?
That's way above my head.
Give me your example. Send me the file and I'll have a look at it. Okay, so if there's no further questions, it's 4 o'clock. I hope you haven't suffered too much from listening to me for too many hours, and I hope that you've managed to take something away from it. I think I've got an understanding where the questions are coming from, and therefore where additional guidance. But if you have other requests or clarifications, then we have the EMA service desk that you have to register with it, but once you register you can submit questions to it, and unfortunately mostly come to me, sometimes to Tom. So I carry on asking questions, and from that we'll hopefully develop better guidelines and make everything clearer and easier for you during the next coming months while you're implementing. So thank you for coming, thank you for listening, and safe journeys home. Thank you.